Hello and welcome to our webinar series on GSC AML inspections. This video will cover AML CFT Staff. We're going to cover the following topics in this bite-sized webinar: MLRO responsibilities, AML CFT Compliance Officer responsibilities, and some best practices to consider. Let's get into it. During an inspection, the inspectors would like to establish that the AML CFT compliance staff understand their responsibilities and that they have the necessary time and resources to undertake such responsibilities. All operators must have an MLRO appointed, even if not currently trading. A change of MLRO must be notified to the GSC as entry controls apply. An MLRO needs to meet the following requirements. 1. To have seniority, expertise, and authority. The code states that the MLRO must have sufficient seniority and authority. The GSC expects an MLRO to be a managerial post that carries influence. The GSC will expect an MLRO to be able to demonstrate expertise and competency and be able to describe in detail applicable SAR reporting requirements, gambling typologies and risk factors, the business model and customer base, all aspects of AML CFT processes in the organisation, and broad patterns and trends, including the approximate ratio of high-risk to low-risk players, the approximate volume of internal and external disclosures, the conversion rate of internal SARs to external SARs, the reasons for any apparent under- or over-reporting by staff, and any factors that have proven useful in the risk rating process. The MLRO is also expected to have direct access to officers of the operator. In addition to having sufficient knowledge and authority, the MLRO must also be able to liaise directly with the board and senior management of the operator. It is imperative that the advice of the MLRO is taken on board regarding the handling of suspected proceeds of crime. The GSC would also expect the MLRO to provide regular reports to the board regarding trends and typologies, so that the business can feed this into their risk-based policies, procedures, and staff training. It's important for the MLRO to have sufficient time and resources to properly discharge their responsibilities. The inspectorate would like to see evidence of this. Sufficient resources includes access to the appropriate systems and records, including Themis, and access to staff to assist with systems and product expertise as may be required. An MLRO should be able to demonstrate they have sufficient time and resources through staying abreast of AML CFT trends and typologies, having no backlogs or delays in handling SARs or inquiries, making good quality and timely external disclosures, regular reports on SARs such as trends and volumes to the board, and participation in AML CFT consultations and events such as the AML Forum. Some operators may have group or head office MLROs that carry out roles across a number of jurisdictions. This approach is permissible, however the MLRO must be able to demonstrate understanding of Isle of Man requirements, and that they have sufficient time and resource to carry out their role effectively. The code also states that the operator may appoint a deputy MLRO, but it does not require one to be appointed. Except for very small or new operators, the GSC would expect a deputy to be appointed and advised to the GSC so that any entry controls may be satisfied. Conflicts of interest. The MLRO should be independent from the enterprise functions of the company. If the MLRO reports to a senior figure, such as a director, then it should not be to a person with a responsibility to profit rather than compliance. It is understood that this may not be possible for smaller operations, however, best efforts should be made. For larger operators, the MLRO may be supported by a team of staff members, each with the ability to submit disclosures to the FIU using Themis. As the code requires the MLRO or DMLRO to access internal disclosures and make external disclosures, the work of the reporting team must be closely supervised by the MLRO or their deputy, and they remain responsible for the reporting function. Good practice tips. It's good practice to document all decisions made by the MLRO, regardless of whether a disclosure was made. This includes the relevant times and dates. For example, if an MLRO receives lots of internal SARs, but none of these were escalated to the FIU, the rationale behind this decision should be clearly documented. Ensure communication lines are direct and clear. Does the MLRO have sufficient time and resources? Evidence this where possible. When suspicion needs to be investigated, it is vital that the MLRO does not have conflicts of interest. For this reason, care should be taken to ensure that, wherever possible, the MLRO does not hold a joint role that has responsibility to AML CFT and an enterprise function. Operators should put in place measures to deal with short or longer-term absence of the MLRO and deputy, so that suspicious activity reporting functions may continue uninterrupted. AML CFT Compliance Officers. AML CFT Compliance Officers should have seniority, expertise, and authority. The Code states that the AML CFT Compliance Officer must have sufficient seniority and authority. Like that of the MLRO, the GSC expects a compliance officer to be a managerial post that carries influence, but a director need not hold it. The GSC will expect a compliance officer to be able to demonstrate expertise and competency and be able to describe in detail applicable AML CFT requirements, gambling typologies and risk factors, the operator's business model and customer base, the findings of the BRA, the operator's AML CFT policies, procedures and systems, the programs to test these policies, procedures and systems, any shortcomings, including GSC report findings of those policies and procedures and systems, and plans to remediate any of those shortcomings. It is also expected that the AML CFT Compliance Officer must be able to liaise directly with the board and senior management of the operator. It is imperative that the advice of the Compliance Officer is taken on board regarding AML CFT policies, procedures and systems, so good, clear communication lines are essential. The AML CFT Compliance Officer must have sufficient time and resource to properly discharge their responsibilities for implementing and testing AML CFT procedures and controls and reporting to the board. Resource includes access to the appropriate systems and records and to staff in order to assess how well procedures and controls are working. An AML CFT Compliance Officer should be able to demonstrate that they have sufficient time and resource through staying abreast of AML CFT trends and typologies, demonstrating up-to-date and detailed understanding of AML CFT requirements and the operator's own procedures and controls, including any shortcomings and plans for remediation. Regular, at least annual AML CFT reports to the board, and participation in AML CFT consultations and events such as the AML Forum. The GSC does not expect or require a deputy to be formally appointed, but does expect the operator to arrange cover in the event of the AML CFT Compliance Officer being out of office. Good practice tips. The Inspectorate would like to see that AML CFT staff have sufficient time and resources to undertake their roles. Document any decisions made. Ensure you document any audits or spot checks undertaken and their outcomes. This will help the Inspectorate understand the effectiveness of technical compliance. In conclusion, the operator must ensure that it has sufficient staff to undertake AML CFT controls, and that the MLRO and AML CFT compliance officers have sufficient time and resources to undertake their duties. Although operators are allowed to have one individual undertake multiple roles for the license holder, it is a requirement for the individual to have adequate time and resources to fulfill their responsibilities effectively. Finally, keeping records of disclosures evidences compliance with the suspicious activity reporting requirements of the AML Code, POCA and ATCA. These need to be kept up to date at all times. Registers will also provide the MLRO and AML CFT Compliance Officer with useful information for trend analysis. For more information on the inspections process, please see the other videos in this playlist on our YouTube channel or view the guidance on our website.